Hi everyone! With the launch of Sophos Firewall version 20, we're excited to announce Active Threat Response, which brings MDR and XDR integration directly to Sophos Firewall using MDR threat feeds. This integration enables the Sophos MDR team to share threat intelligence with the firewall in real time and respond to active threats on the network quickly and effectively. Let's check out this exciting new feature. First, let's see how Active Threat Response works. In this example, a customer uses multiple Sophos products, including switches, firewalls, access points, and managed endpoints. All these products send telemetry in the form of events, device logs, and alerts to the central Sophos data lake, where the Sophos MDR 24/7 threat hunting team continuously analyzes the data. Using advanced tools, AI, and ML algorithms, they identify any anomaly in the network for that specific customer. Let's assume the Sophos MDR threat hunting team discovers a potential threat in the customer's network. The MDR analyst quickly confirms the threat and immediately takes response to directly insert and block it. A threat or indicator of compromise, also known as an IOC, is blocked by the firewall within all relevant subsystems, such as the firewall, DNS block list, IPS, web, and deep packet inspection. Here, Sophos Central acts as the glue between Sophos Firewall and Sophos MDR, allowing MDR analysts to push real-time intelligence. Threat response is completely automated and real-time. There's no need for MDR analysts or customer admins to create manual configurations, such as objects for IOCs, firewall block rules, DNS block lists, or block web protection policies. Additionally, Active Threat Response brings synchronized security to another level, so that MDR, firewall, and endpoint all work in unison to provide real-time automated threat response. If a managed endpoint within the network tries to access or initiate traffic to the malicious IOC, the firewall not only blocks the attempt, but automatically queries the endpoint using synchronized security for additional information, such as the executable, process user, and logged-in user, which helps the admin pinpoint the compromised endpoint. In such an event, Sophos endpoint can also be automatically isolated, and lateral movement protection kicks in to stop the threat from spreading across the network. Note, the MDR team will take remediation action only if the customer has authorized them to do so. Active Threat Response is equally effective if you have IoTs, unmanaged endpoints, or even third-party switches, access points, and servers. Sophos NDR can collect telemetry from third-party sensors and send this threat intel to the centralized Sophos data lake for MDR analysts. This means you get the same level of threat protection regardless of your IT environment. Now, before I go into the deployment details, there are a few prerequisites. You must have purchased Sophos MDR and optionally NDR. Sophos Firewall must be running version 20 or later and have the Active Extreme Protection Bundle. The firewall must be registered to Sophos Central with firewall management, central reporting, and optionally, synchronized security turned on for lateral movement protection. On the endpoint side, a valid Intercept X license for endpoint security and lateral movement protection is required, but this is optional. Now, let's look at an example. In this deployment, I have two endpoints connected to a Sophos switch, which is connected to port 2, the LAN interface of the firewall. Port 1 is connected to the internet. I'll navigate to the Sophos Firewall web console. There's now a new Active Threat Response menu option. By selecting it, I see two new dynamic threat feeds, MDR threat feeds and Sophos XOps threat feeds, which was formerly named Advanced Threat Protection. For this example, let's assume the MDR team has identified some threats in our environment, such as a malicious domain, URL, or IP address. They've already inserted the IOC on the firewall. And I can look at the back end of the firewall to view this. Here I see the blocked IP address 1.1.1.1, domain example.com, and URL example.com/index.html. First, I'll try accessing the domain from an unmanaged endpoint. As a reminder, MDR protection is disabled. If I try to load the domain, it's reachable. Now, I'll turn on MDR protection and try to refresh the browser. And now, the domain is no longer accessible. I can also try to access this over unsecure HTTP, and the result is the same. Finally, I'll try to access the URL, and this is also blocked. Now let's head over to SFOS and view the control center. Here I see a new MDR widget that shows blocked sources. By clicking on this, I can see more details such as the IP address of the endpoint, threat feed type, and device health, I can even see the number of requests for that specific domain coming from the client. Multiple firewall modules work in unison to block a variety of threats. I'll navigate to the log viewer to see the different module details. And I'll filter for active threat response. Under Origin, I see that the request to the malicious domain is blocked by firewall modules such as IPS, DNS, and Web. Next, I'll try to access the same malicious domain from a Sophos endpoint. In Sophos Central, I can see the information about any connected endpoints, and here I have 2 of them. I'll try to access the same domain, and there's no response. I'll try the URL as well, and it's also unreachable. In the endpoint, I see a potential threat detected. Going to the events section, I can see it here. And if I navigate to the Firewall Control Center, there are 2 sources trying to access the potential threat. I'll click on the widget to view more details. Now, since this was a Sophos managed endpoint, the firewall queried the endpoint using synchronized security for additional info, such as the user and process that access the domain. The heartbeat status has also turned red. Sophos Firewall will block the MAC address, and all the communication from this endpoint will be denied. So now if I try to access the internet, there's no response. I'll run a ping to verify this. And the request has timed out. Next, let's see lateral movement protection in action. Lateral movement protection prevents threats from spreading by blocking compromised endpoints from communicating on the network. Once an endpoint is detected as compromised, its MAC address is blacklisted by the firewall and shared with other endpoints on the network, preventing communication with the compromised device. To turn on lateral movement protection, in Sophos Central, go to My Products, General Settings, Reject Network Connections. Enable the option to reject connections from devices with a red heartbeat. Note, the firewall and endpoint should be connected to the same Sophos Central account. I'll save the changes. Now, to demonstrate this, I'll navigate to Sophos Firewall and verify the connected endpoint information. I see 2 connected endpoints. Synchronized security is also enabled. First, I'll ping another endpoint which is on the 2.10 network, and I can see the successful ping response. Now, I'll try to access the malicious domain from the other endpoint. And here, the ping is blocked immediately, which means lateral movement protection has triggered. In the endpoint, I also see an event that access to this computer is blocked. So that's lateral movement protection in action. Okay, now I'll take you through reporting and auditing in Sophos Firewall version 20. Both on-box and cloud reporting is supported in this version. On-box reporting can be accessed by going to Reports, the Network and Threats tab, and showing active threat response. The firewall report includes many more insights on threat source, number of events, user, and the module that blocked the threat. You can also see the unique destination and host that tried to access it. If a user accesses the threat from Sophos endpoint, I can see additional telemetry under the synchronized IOC section, such as process user, executable, threat URL IP, and number of events. Moving on, let's look at the Sophos Central side. To view reports, go to My Products, Firewall Management, Report Hub. I'll select the firewall I'm interested in. And now in the security section, I can see all the events detected across all our endpoints. To view a detailed report, click View Report. Here I can see details like number of sources, threats, and hits. Lastly, I'll discuss auditing. In Sophos Firewall, the log viewer can be used to view any updates made to the threat feed by MDR analysts. Filter by Admin. In the Details view, there is a new Audit ID tag, and this can be used for compliance and investigation. Let's switch to Sophos Central. Once again, go to My Products, Firewall Management, Task Queue. We've added a new tab called Firewall Task Queue. Here I can see all events performed by the MDR team for a given firewall, such as adding an IOC. And I can also see more details by clicking on the event. And that covers our overview of active threat response in Sophos Firewall version 20. I hope you found this video useful. Let us know by giving us a thumbs up on TechVids. For further assistance, view and post questions on community.sophos.com and go to techvids.sophos.com for more great videos like this one. Thanks for watching.